You've been screaming your competence at people who were never listening, and the quieter ones have been stealing your share while you talked. Every time you proved how smart you were, every time you demonstrated your capability, every time you opened your mouth to show the room what you could do, you were building a wall you still can't see. People didn't admire you. They catalogued you. They filed you under a threat level, and every bright, loud, impressive thing you did raised that level until you became a target that needed managing. And you didn't notice. You were too busy being right. You were too busy being impressive. You were too busy winning the room to realize the room was closing around you. Here is the truth that will reorganize everything you think you know about power: being seen as competent is temporary praise. Being underestimated is permanent leverage. These are not the same thing, and most people spend their entire lives chasing the first one while the second one sits untouched, waiting for someone ruthless enough to pick it up. Machiavelli understood something that your teachers, your parents, and every well-meaning mentor completely missed. The appearance of power and the reality of power are two different currencies. They move in opposite directions. When people believe you are strong, they prepare for you. They build countermeasures. They form alliances against you. They lie in wait. But when people believe you are weak, they relax. They turn their backs. They open doors they would never open for someone they feared. The most dangerous position in any room is not at the head of the table, it is the position everyone has already dismissed. You have been taught the opposite your whole life. Show your strengths. Let your light shine. Prove yourself. Demonstrate value. Speak up. Stand out. And every single one of those instructions is a trap dressed as wisdom, because the people who gave you that advice are not the ones winning. The ones winning are the ones who told you to speak up while they stayed silent. They collected the information you volunteered. They watched the reactions your visibility provoked. They mapped the alliances your ambition disrupted. And when the moment came, they took what was left. In the next several minutes, I am going to give you 7 dark principles that will rewire how you move through every room, every conversation, every negotiation, and every hierarchy you encounter for the rest of your life. These are not theories. They are instruments. Each one costs you something: your ego, your need for validation, your addiction to being seen as the smartest person in the room. But each one gives you something far more valuable in return. They give you the ability to walk into any situation, be completely underestimated, and take everything before anyone realizes what happened. Let us begin. Number 1. Broadcasting strength creates resistance you haven't prepared for. There is an ancient principle of warfare that most people have heard but almost nobody actually understands. Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. People repeat this as if it is a clever aphorism, a little piece of ancient wisdom to drop at dinner parties. They miss the entire point. This is not about being clever. It is about the fundamental mechanics of how human beings respond to perceived power. When you broadcast competence, when you make sure everyone knows how capable you are, how intelligent you are, how much you bring to the table, you trigger a survival response in everyone around you. They do not celebrate you. They do not reward you. They assess you as a threat and begin calculating how to neutralize you. This is not conscious. This is not malicious. It is baked into the deepest architecture of human social behavior. When someone appears more powerful, more capable, more intelligent than us, our nervous system registers them as competition for resources, status, attention, opportunity, access. And our nervous system is almost always right, because that is exactly what a highly competent person is. You have felt this yourself. Think about the last time someone entered your environment and immediately started demonstrating how impressive they were. You did not feel inspired. You felt a tightening. A wariness. A quiet voice that said, "What does this person want, and what are they going to take from me?" That voice is the same voice everyone else hears when you broadcast your competence. The problem is that you have been trained to see this tightening as a sign of respect. You interpret the room going quiet when you speak as admiration. Sometimes it is. But more often, it is the sound of people reorganizing their defenses. You are not commanding respect. You are triggering contingency planning. And while you are busy feeling powerful, 3 or 4 people in that room have already begun quietly building the structures that will marginalize you. This is what most people never understand about visibility. Visibility is not power. Visibility is vulnerability. Every time you show your hand, you give people the information they need to counter you. Every time you demonstrate competence, you show people exactly where your competence ends. Every time you prove yourself, you reveal the standard by which you should be measured, and the moment someone finds you falling short of that standard, even once, the narrative flips from admiration to schadenfreude. The taller the pedestal, the more spectacular the fall. And people love watching tall people fall. Strategic people understand this at a level that bypasses conscious thought. They do not hide their competence out of modesty or humility. They hide it because a revealed weapon is a neutralized weapon. A blade only cuts when the opponent does not know it is coming. The moment they see the blade, they put on armor. The moment they know you are sharp, they stop bringing their throats close to you. Your competence, displayed openly, does not protect you. It armors everyone around you. So here is what you need to internalize. When you walk into a room and feel the urge to prove yourself, that urge is not ambition. It is insecurity wearing ambition's clothing. The need to be seen as competent is itself a form of weakness, because it means your sense of power depends on other people's perception. A truly strategic person does not need the room to know they are dangerous. They only need the room to find out when it is already too late. Number 2. Appear less intelligent than you are, and let people's own laziness do your work for you. Human beings are cognitive misers. Our brains are wired to conserve energy, and one of the ways we do this is by categorizing people as quickly as possible using the least amount of information available. The moment someone meets you, their mind is scrambling to file you into a pre-existing category. Smart or not. Threat or not. Competitor or not. Worth listening to or not. This categorization happens fast, it happens below conscious awareness, and once it locks in, it is remarkably resistant to revision. This is your greatest advantage, and you have been wasting it. When you demonstrate intelligence quickly, when you correct someone, when you offer the sharpest insight in the first 5 minutes of a meeting, when you use vocabulary that signals you are 3 steps ahead, you trigger the category of threat. And once you are in that category, everything you say for the rest of the interaction is filtered through suspicion. Your ideas get more scrutiny. Your suggestions get more resistance. Your presence gets more monitoring. You have made yourself expensive to interact with, and people resent things that are expensive. But when you appear less intelligent than you are, when you ask a question that seems slightly obvious, when you let someone explain something you already understand, when you nod along with an explanation that has a flaw you can see but choose not to name, something extraordinary happens. People categorize you as non-threatening. And that categorization unlocks a cascade of advantages that the smartest person in the room will never access. When people think you are less intelligent, they explain more. They reveal more. They show you their reasoning, their assumptions, their blind spots. They volunteer information they would never share with someone they considered an equal, because they do not perceive you as competition. They are not performing for you. They are not filtering themselves around you. They are being exactly who they are, because they have decided you are not someone worth performing for. This is intelligence gathering that no amount of overt competence can buy. The person who appears sharp gets managed. The person who appears dull gets confided in. And the person who gets confided in eventually knows everything about everyone. There is a deeper layer to this. When you allow people to feel smarter than you, you give them a gift, the gift of intellectual superiority. And people are deeply, pathetically addicted to that gift. They will protect the source of it. They will advocate for the person who makes them feel intelligent. They will promote the person who does not challenge their sense of being the smartest in the room. Not because you are a sycophant, but because you have become a mirror that reflects back the image they most want to see. Most people are too proud to do this. Their ego will not allow someone to walk away thinking they are smarter. They need the room to know. They need the credit. They need the validation. And that need is exactly what makes them predictable, manageable, and ultimately controllable by people who do not need it. Here is the principle. Make your victims feel smart, and they will let their guard down. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person. That discomfort makes people vigilant, and vigilant people are hard to read, hard to move, and hard to defeat. But comfort makes people careless. Comfort makes people open. Comfort makes people vulnerable. And the most efficient way to manufacture comfort in someone else's mind is to let them believe they are operating at a higher level than you. You are not being passive. You are not being weak. You are being strategic at a depth that most people cannot even conceptualize, because they are still playing the game of looking smart while you are playing the game of knowing everything. Number 3. Never outshine the master. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive principle in the entire architecture of power, and it is the one that destroys more talented people than any other. The person above you, your boss, your leader, your mentor, your superior in whatever hierarchy you operate within, is not your friend. They are not your partner. They are a human being with insecurities, ego, and a desperate need to maintain their position above you. And the single most dangerous thing you can do to that person is make them feel that you might be better than them. Not that you are better. That you might be. The mere possibility is enough. You have probably experienced this without understanding the mechanism. You did something brilliant at work. You solved a problem your boss could not solve. You delivered a presentation that made your manager look ordinary by comparison. And instead of being rewarded, something shifted. The warmth decreased. The opportunities narrowed. The feedback became sharper, more critical, more focused on minor flaws. You were confused, because you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You performed. You delivered. You proved your value. That is the trap. By proving your value, you threaten the one person whose opinion of you determines your trajectory. And that person does not experience your competence as an asset. They experience it as a countdown timer on their own relevance. The instinct of a superior who feels threatened is not to promote you. It is to contain you. They will not fire you, because you are useful. But they will make sure you never rise high enough to threaten them. They will give you responsibilities that keep you busy but invisible. They will take credit for your best ideas. They will find reasons to keep you in your current position, and those reasons will always sound reasonable, professional, and logical, because the real reason is unspoken and perhaps even unconscious to them. Envy does not announce itself. It does not say, I am envious of you, therefore I will sabotage your career. It says, this person has some real weaknesses in leadership. It says, they are not ready yet. It says, they need more time to develop. Envy is the most sophisticated liar in the human psychological repertoire, because it always wears the mask of legitimate judgment. So what do strategic people do? They do not suppress their competence entirely, that would make them worthless, and worthless people get discarded. They calibrate. They perform at exactly the level that makes their superior feel secure, and not one notch higher. They make their superior look good. They attribute wins upward. They ask for advice they do not need. They create opportunities for their superior to demonstrate expertise, and then they listen with what appears to be genuine admiration. This is not sycophancy. Sycophancy is obvious, and obvious flattery is contemptible. What I am describing is something subtler and far more powerful. It is the strategic management of another person's ego. You are not flattering them. You are creating an environment in which their ego feels safe, because an ego that feels safe does not attack. An ego that feels safe opens doors, shares information, extends trust, and advocates for your advancement, because your advancement, in their mind, validates their judgment in having supported you. The moment you outshine the master, you reverse this entire dynamic. Now your advancement threatens them. Now your success diminishes them. Now every step forward you take is a step they should have taken, and they will make sure you take as few as possible. This principle extends beyond formal hierarchies. In every social group, in every friendship network, in every professional circle, there is a pecking order. And the person at the top of that pecking order is monitoring for threats. You can be the most talented person in the group and still be the most marginalized, if your talent makes the wrong person feel small. The strategic move is almost always the same. Let them feel big. Let them feel like the sun while you are the moon. And while they are basking in what they believe is their rightful place at the center of the solar system, you are quietly building the infrastructure that will make their position irrelevant. Number 4. The relief mechanism, why people lower their guard around someone they have judged as non-threatening, and what that gap in vigilance costs them. This is where the psychology gets dark, and this is where you need to pay attention at a level you have probably never paid attention before. Because this principle is the engine that makes every other principle in this framework work. When people assess you as non-threatening, they experience something you would never expect. Relief. Not just casual disinterest, actual psychological relief. The removal of a social threat is processed by the nervous system as a reduction in danger, and that reduction triggers a cascade of behavioral changes that most people never notice, but a strategic person can read like a printed page. Their breathing changes. Their body language opens. They start sharing opinions they would filter around someone they considered a peer. They make jokes they would not make in front of a competitor. They complain about people they would never complain about in front of someone they feared might use that information. They make predictions, reveal plans, express doubts, and expose vulnerabilities, all because their mind has categorized you as someone who cannot do anything with this information even if you wanted to. This is the gap. And the gap is where everything happens. Think about it this way. When a security guard believes a building is empty, they stop checking the cameras. When a general believes the enemy has retreated, they pull back their lines. When a competitor believes you are not a competitor, they stop competing with you. And in that space, that unmonitored, unguarded, unfiltered space, you have complete freedom to observe, to learn, to plan, and to position. The cost to them is catastrophic, and they never feel it happening. That is the beauty of it. When you defeat someone who was prepared for you, they feel the defeat and they learn from it. When you defeat someone who had already dismissed you, they do not feel the defeat until it is total. They did not see it coming. They cannot reconstruct how it happened. They cannot build defenses against it in the future, because they never identified the threat in the first place. You did not beat them. You simply appeared in a position they had already ceded to someone they were not watching. This is why underestimation is the most powerful strategic position in human interaction. Not because it gives you strength, you already have the strength. Because it removes their defenses. It is the difference between attacking a fortress and walking through an open door. The first requires enormous force and still might fail. The second requires almost no force and almost never fails. Every time you have felt the urge to correct someone's misjudgment of you, every time someone has assumed you were less capable than you are and you felt the burning need to set the record straight, you were about to close your own open door. You were about to pick up your own key and hand it back. The discomfort of being underestimated is the price of admission to a position of total strategic advantage, and most people cannot tolerate that discomfort for more than a few seconds. That is what separates you from them, if you can sit with it. The ability to tolerate being underestimated without correcting the record is a form of emotional control that borders on supernatural. Most people's ego will not allow it. Their self-image demands recognition. Their identity is built on being seen as competent, and being misjudged feels like an assault on who they are. They would rather be accurately assessed and defeated than inaccurately assessed and victorious, because the victory feels hollow if no one knows it was their victory. This is the disease that keeps talented people poor, marginalized, and bitter. They need the credit more than they need the result. They need the recognition more than they need the power. And the people who understand this, the ones who quietly take everything while the talented ones are busy demanding applause, those are the ones who run the world. Number 5. Conceal your intentions behind a dull exterior. Everything we have discussed so far has been about how people perceive your capability. But there is a second dimension to underestimation that is equally dangerous and equally powerful, and it has to do with how people perceive your intentions. Most people broadcast their intentions constantly, and they do not even realize they are doing it. Their body language signals ambition. Their word choices signal aspiration. The questions they ask signal interest. The topics they gravitate toward signal priorities. Every microbehavior is a transmission, and the people around you are receiving stations that are always on, always recording, always updating their model of what you want and what you are likely to do next. When people can predict what you want, they can control what you get. When people can anticipate your next move, they can block it, redirect it, or co-opt it. When people know your intentions, you become a piece on their board, moving in directions they have already accounted for. The strategic response is not to have no intentions. It is to have intentions that are invisible. To want things that no one knows you want. To move toward goals that no one has identified as goals. To build toward outcomes that, when they arrive, seem to have happened by accident, or by natural course, or by someone else's decision, never by your design. This requires a dull exterior. Not a mysterious exterior. Mystery attracts attention, and attention is the enemy of concealment. A dull exterior. The kind of person that people's eyes slide past. The kind of presence that registers in a room and then immediately fades from active memory. The kind of conversation that is pleasant enough to not be rude but forgettable enough to not be analyzed. You become the person people cannot remember what they talk to you about. You become the person whose name they forget at parties. You become the person who was definitely there but they cannot quite picture. And while you are dissolving into the background of everyone's awareness, you are watching everything, cataloging everything, building a map of the territory that everyone else is too busy performing to notice. Concealment is not deception in the way most people think of deception. Deception is active lying, constructing a false narrative, maintaining a fiction, managing the gap between what you said and what is true. That is exhausting and fragile. Concealment is something else entirely. Concealment is simply not volunteering information. It is the strategic absence of revelation. You do not lie. You do not construct. You simply do not show what is behind the curtain, because no one has asked, and you are not going to offer. People are surprisingly comfortable with this. They fill in the blanks themselves. Human beings cannot tolerate ambiguity, so when someone does not reveal their intentions, people assign intentions to them, and they almost always assign intentions that are less ambitious, less strategic, and less dangerous than the real ones. Because most people cannot imagine wanting what you want. They project their own modest ambitions onto your silence and feel satisfied that they have figured you out. Let them. Every assumption they make about you is a brick in the wall they are building around themselves, not around you. They are constructing the very blind spots that will eventually be their undoing. When you finally move, when the position is right, the information is complete, and the path is clear, your action will seem to come from nowhere. Because it does come from nowhere, as far as they are concerned. There was no signal. There was no build-up. There was no warning. One day you were the forgettable person in the corner, and the next day you were holding the thing they all wanted, and none of them can reconstruct how it happened. That is the power of concealed intentions behind a dull exterior. You do not need to be mysterious. You do not need to be impressive. You need to be invisible until the moment you choose not to be. Number 6. Led from behind. There is a principle of power that almost no one talks about, because it contradicts everything our culture celebrates about leadership. The most powerful position in any system is not the visible one. It is the one behind the visible one. The position that controls the person who appears to be in control. Think about who holds real power in any organization, any government, any institution. It is almost never the person whose name is on the door. It is the advisor. The chief of staff. The person who controls what information reaches the leader, what options get presented, what framing is used. The person who is never publicly associated with the decision but who shaped every factor that produced it. Visibility is a magnet for attack. The person at the front of the room is the person every critic, every rival, every ambitious subordinate is aiming at. They are the target. Their decisions are scrutinized. Their mistakes are amplified. Their personal life is fodder. Every bit of power they hold is public, which means every bit of vulnerability they have is also public. The person behind them holds the same effective power with none of the exposure. They shape the decisions without signing them. They influence the direction without being associated with it. They build the networks, control the information flow, and determine the options, and when something goes wrong, the person in front takes the blame. When something goes right, the person in front takes the credit, and the person behind does not care, because credit is a currency for people who need external validation. What they need is influence, and they have it. This principle applies at every level, not just at the top of hierarchies. In a friendship group, the most influential person is rarely the loudest one. It is the one everyone confides in, the one whose opinion is sought privately, the one who shapes the group's direction without ever making a public proposal. In a workplace, it is the person who seems to know everything about everyone, who is consulted before decisions are made, who is trusted by multiple factions simultaneously. In a negotiation, it is the person who lets the other side talk themselves into the position you wanted them to reach, so they believe it was their idea. Leading from behind requires the same core discipline as every other principle in this framework. You must be willing to not be seen. You must be willing to not get the credit. You must be willing to watch someone else stand in the spotlight holding the trophy that you handed them, knowing that the trophy is meaningless and the hand that handed it is what holds the real power. Most people cannot do this. The need for recognition is too deep. The hunger for visible status is too primal. They would rather be the king of a small hill than the invisible architect of a mountain. And so they climb the hill, plant their flag, and spend the rest of their careers defending a position that everyone is trying to take from them, while the architect is already building the next mountain. The question you need to ask yourself is not how do I become more visible? It is how do I make my visibility irrelevant to my power? How do I build structures, relationships, and information networks that generate influence regardless of whether anyone knows I exist? The answer to that question is the answer to sustainable, unassailable power. Number 7. The line between strategic underperformance and actual decay. This is the principle that saves your life, because everything I have told you so far can destroy you if you misunderstand it. There is a line. And the line is this. Strategic underperformance is a choice you make about how much of your capability to reveal, when, and to whom. Decay is what happens when you start believing your own cover story. When you pretend to be less intelligent than you are, you must never forget that you are pretending. When you hold back your best ideas, you must never lose the habit of having best ideas. When you conceal your ambition, you must never let the concealment become the absence of ambition itself. The mask must never become the face. This is where most people who attempt strategic underperformance fail catastrophically. They start dimming their light, and they dim it so long that they forget how to turn it back on. They start playing small, and the game becomes real. They start holding back, and the holding back becomes a habit, and the habit becomes an identity, and the identity becomes a life that is smaller than the one they could have lived. This is the difference between patience and passivity. Patience is the active, deliberate choice to wait for the optimal moment, while maintaining full readiness and full capability. Passivity is the surrender of agency, the slow erosion of ambition, the quiet acceptance of a position that is beneath you because fighting for more feels like too much work. Patience is a weapon. Passivity is a disease. And the disease often disguises itself as the weapon, because both look identical from the outside. You must develop the internal discipline to know the difference at all times. Ask yourself, am I holding back because I have a strategy, or am I holding back because I am afraid? Am I concealing my competence because I am waiting for the right moment, or because I have lost confidence in my competence altogether? Am I playing the long game, or am I simply not playing? The answers to these questions must be brutally honest. The moment you start lying to yourself about your reasons for underperforming, you have crossed the line from strategy to decay. And decay is silent. You will not feel it happening. You will not notice the slow erosion of your edge. You will simply wake up one day, years from now, and realize that you have become the person you were pretending to be, and the pretending cost you everything you were pretending to hide. There is also a social dimension to this danger. When people consistently treat you as less capable than you are, their expectations begin to shape your behavior in ways you do not consciously perceive. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon. When someone is consistently treated as if they are less intelligent, their performance tends to drift downward to match the expectation. Not because they are weak, but because human beings are social creatures who unconsciously calibrate to the assessments of those around them. The lower the expectation, the lower the performance, and the lower the performance, the more the expectation is confirmed. It is a feedback loop that can quietly consume years of your potential. The strategic person breaks this loop through private maintenance of capability. You must have spaces in your life where you perform at full capacity, where your intelligence is exercised without restriction, where your ambition is fed and your skills are sharpened. These spaces can be private. They can be solitary. They can be invisible to everyone you know. But they must exist. A blade that is never drawn still needs to be kept sharp, because the moment you finally draw it, it must cut. If you are strategically underperforming in your career, you should be reading, studying, practicing, and building in private at a level that exceeds what your most visible competitor is doing in public. If you are concealing your intelligence in social settings, you should be developing that intelligence in private settings to a degree that would astonish the people who underestimate you. The underperformance is a public strategy. The development is a private obligation. Both must be maintained simultaneously, and the private work must never, ever stop. This is the discipline that separates the Machiavellian operator from the merely passive person. The passive person underperforms because they have given up. The Machiavellian operator underperforms because they are building something that makes performance irrelevant. The passive person is shrinking. The Machiavellian operator is loading. And from the outside, they look exactly the same, until the moment of action, when one of them takes everything and the other wonders what happened. Let me bring this together, because the pieces only make sense as a whole. You have been taught your entire life that visibility equals power, that recognition equals respect, that being seen as competent is the path to success. And every institution you have passed through, school, work, social groups, has reinforced this belief, because institutions are designed to identify and reward visible competence. They give grades. They give promotions. They give awards. They give status. And you learn to chase those rewards, because they felt like proof that you were who you thought you were. But the rewards are the trap. The moment you chase visible proof of your competence, you become predictable. You become a target. You become a piece on a board that someone else is playing. Your need for recognition becomes the leash that anyone can pull, because they know what you want, and knowing what you want is knowing how to control you. The 7 principles I have given you are not about becoming less than you are. They are about becoming more than anyone knows. They are about building power in the space between what people see and what actually exists. They are about making the gap between perception and reality so wide that when reality finally asserts itself, the correction is total and irreversible. When you stop broadcasting strength, you stop triggering resistance. When you appear less intelligent, you gather intelligence. When you never outshine the master, you avoid the blade of envy. When you let people's relief lower their guard, you walk through doors that are already open. When you conceal your intentions behind a dull exterior, you become impossible to predict. When you lead from behind, you hold power without holding a target. And when you maintain the line between strategic underperformance and decay, you ensure that the blade stays sharp even while it stays hidden. This is not a philosophy of weakness. This is a philosophy of power so concentrated that it does not need to be seen to be felt. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike the man who wronged you. I would extend that. The best position is to be unlike what everyone expected you to be, in a direction they never accounted for. Being seen as competent is temporary praise. Being underestimated is permanent leverage. Being liked is not being respected. And being respected is not being feared. It is being impossible to predict, impossible to prepare for, and impossible to stop once you move. You have been screaming your competence at people who were never listening. Now you know why. And now you know what the quiet ones have been doing while you talked. They have been doing exactly what I have just described to you. They have been appearing weak. They have been concealing their intelligence. They have been managing your ego while you performed for theirs. They have been walking through open doors while you battered down closed ones. And they have been taking your share, not because they are smarter than you, but because they understood something you did not. Now you understand it. The question is what you do with that understanding. And I will tell you what most people do. Nothing. They hear this, they feel a flash of recognition, they think yes, that makes sense, and then they go back to their lives and do exactly what they were doing before. They walk into the next meeting and prove themselves again. They correct the next person who underestimates them. They chase the next round of recognition with the same hunger that has been consuming them for years. Because the addiction to being seen is stronger than the discipline of being strategic, and most people are addicts who do not know they are addicted. Are you? Or are you going to do the hardest thing a capable person can do, which is to stop proving yourself and start positioning yourself? To stop demanding recognition and start collecting leverage? To stop being the smartest person in the room and start being the person who knows everything about everyone in the room? To stop performing and start preparing? To stop being seen and start being impossible to see coming? Right now, not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when you feel ready. Right now, in the next conversation you have, in the next meeting you walk into, in the next interaction where someone underestimates you, let them. Sit with it. Do not correct it. Do not clarify. Do not prove. Let the gap open. Let the guard drop. Let the information flow. And file it all. This is the ruthless art Machiavelli perfected. The art of appearing to be less than you are until the moment you are more than anyone can handle. The art of making the space between perception and reality so vast that when you finally cross it, no one has time to respond. He understood that the most dangerous person in any room is not the one everyone is watching. It is the one everyone has already dismissed. Now it is yours. If you understood what I just told you, not in your head but in your gut, if you felt something shift when I described the gap between being seen and being strategic, then you already know what you need to do. You need to stop performing and start positioning. You need to stop being visible and start being dangerous. You need to become the person who walks into every room and is immediately underestimated, and who uses that underestimation like a weapon that never needs to be drawn. Go to the comments right now and type the words, "I am untouchable." Not because the words have power. Because the act of claiming that identity, publicly, in the face of every instinct that tells you to stay small and quiet and invisible in the way that decay is invisible, that act is the first move. That is you drawing the line between strategic underperformance and actual passivity. That is you declaring that the mask is a mask, that the underperformance is a choice, that the concealment has a purpose, and that when the moment comes, you will be ready. I am untouchable. Say it. Mean it. And then live like it is true, because if you have understood everything I have shared with you here, it is. Being seen as competent is temporary praise. Being underestimated is permanent leverage. The quiet ones have been using this against you your whole life. Now the quiet one is you.